Hello, Internet. One of the original purposes of my YouTube channel was to debunk propaganda. And I just ran across some tonight that was being shared by a libertarian friend of mine, and I got kind of upset about it. And when I get upset, I do a lot of research. So I figured that it would be good if I just share this research with you so that you can share it with people who might be posting the same propaganda. So I ran across this radio show, obviously a very right-wing, establishment skeptical, the COVID numbers are a hoax style propaganda site. And they had posted two screenshots, one from Google that showed that the current death total in the United States was about 64,000 for COVID-19, and another one from the CDC that said that it was only 37,000. And the way that they literally framed the two screenshots was so that they didn't show you the heading of the tables. So I found that a little bit skeptical or suspicious to begin with. And they posted it with this question like, so why are these two numbers different? Why is the media reporting on this number that I got from Google that's higher than the number that the CDC is reporting? So I looked into it. As it turns out, both numbers actually come from the CDC. So one of them is the total current death total, which is actually 64,000 as of today's numbers. And the set of criteria, if you look at the, I believe it's a link that says about this data. If you look at the criteria for how they got to 64,000, you'll see that this includes people who have been confirmed as, having died of COVID-19 through testing. And it also lists people that have probably died of COVID-19. And if you actually look at the website, and I encourage you to Google this now, if you actually look at the website, you'll see that their criteria for probable deaths is actually pretty stringent. I mean, honestly, I would argue that it's a little too stringent and that the actual number is probably a good bit higher than 64,000. But you can also go to the CDC website, and if you look in a different place on the website, you'll see that they also list the number 37,000. And if you look at the header for that, that is the provisional death total. Now, the provisional death total is smaller because it's based exclusively on cause of death on death certificates. Now, as someone who recently had to deal very closely with a death in the family, I realized that it takes about 2 weeks for a death certificate to make it from the hospital to a funeral home, which has to sign off on it, and then to your local records office in a local government building. So naturally, the number 37,000, in addition to a couple other things, is by nature about 2 weeks behind the actual total. But it actually got even worse in the comments because I ran into another bit of propaganda. Someone that was saying the CDC was previously listing this as 57,000, which, again, they listed that as this total death total that includes probable cases and confirmed deaths, deaths confirmed through testing. And then that all of a sudden, today it was saying that it was 37,000, that they had, magically 20,000 deaths had disappeared. But that's not the case because, again, you can go to the CDC website right now and it says 64,000. But you can also go to a different part of the CDC website. If you go for the provisional death totals, that's based on death certificates that have been turned into local government offices. That number is 37,000 for the reasons that I just mentioned. So in literally the way that this radio show is framing their screenshots, it was cutting off that header title that would show you that one number was the provisional death total and the other number was a more complete assessment. And this is something that you have to watch out for in propaganda because framing is a big thing. You know, if you're looking at two different sets of data, even from the same source, where they come to the number based on different criteria, of course you're going to get different numbers. Like, that should be obvious. And the thing that's kind of scary about this is that even though the particular website or Facebook page that I got this from was posing this as a question, no one who was responding in the comments was trying to answer that question. None of them were doing the research to try to figure out why these two numbers were different. And because I did the research, I was able to understand why those two numbers were different. So what I want you to start getting into practice of is, even when you see things that you may agree with, go back to the sources that they're citing. See not only if those numbers are actually true, if those sources actually say that, but also look at the criteria, look at how they're determining those numbers, because they could be different criteria. It's also worth pointing out that depending on how you search Google for the death total, you could either get the provisional death total or the total that I'm talking about, that's 64,000 right now. So those are, so like, it's just really weird. Like, either this radio show and Facebook page are so bad at evaluating information that they made this crucial error, or they are intentionally lying to their audience to mislead them and to sell a narrative that is going to hook a skeptical audience. I'm not really sure which is worse. Like, either your job is to accurately report on information available and you failed at that, or you are intentionally misleading your audience. I'm not sure if incompetence or just outright propaganda makes it worse, but in either way, they have done a disservice to their audience. So I just wanted to clear that up, just in case you see anyone saying, oh, it was 57,000 a couple days ago and now it's 37,000. You can calmly explain to them that both numbers are true depending on the criteria with which you evaluate the data. And you can also show them by looking at the CDC's website and searching for the total, which should come up under a basic Google search. You know, the first number that you're probably going to see is 64,000. And then if you search using the same terms in the word provisional, you'll come to a page that lists only those that have appeared on death certificates, which should give you 37,000. So the bottom line here is that the number hasn't changed. The CDC hasn't removed 20,000 deaths because they're fake news. People are just really bad at evaluating statistical data. And it's sad because we live in an era where there is so much information available to us online. And we should be media literate enough, or we should attempt to be media literate enough to be able to understand that data and interpret it correctly. Because if we don't, then we can get ourselves in this point where we think that we're being lied to, even though these sources are being as truthful as they possibly can, even offering us different perspectives on data sets within their own website. I mean, the CDC could just list one of those numbers and just leave it at that. But no, they show you two different numbers based on what criteria you think is best for judging this. Which is kind of a good thing, but I guess with most people being somewhat media illiterate, it leads to confusion, so maybe it's not a good thing, but, you know, there's kind of an argument to be made for that on either side. But I really hope that you learned something today, and I hope that those of you who are out there watching this, if you run into this talking point, that I have armed you with the information that you will need to talk some sense into these morons. Because I can't do it alone, folks. You've got to take a little bit of this on yourself. So, thank you very much for listening, and if I find any other juicy propaganda that I can easily debunk, and give you the tools with which to debunk it yourselves, and keep your friends' information hygiene a little bit more clean than some of these people who think this is all just a massive hoax, then I would like to be able to do that for you. That is one of the purposes with which I make content. So, thank you for tuning in.